Hello, my name is Grant. This is Grant Loves Books. Please would you like and subscribe. Today I'm going to be talking about Dracula, written by Bram Stoker. If you have seen the film Bram Stoker's Dracula from the 1990s, it's not quite like that. Francis Ford Coppola's rather different take on the source material. Dracula is the story of Jonathan and Mina Harker. Jonathan is a lawyer in London. He is being sent to Transylvania to meet with Count Dracula because the Count is interested in buying some London property. And Jonathan, this low-level lawyer, is being sent there to facilitate the sale. Jonathan goes to Transylvania. He meets Count Dracula, and he is rather eccentric and peculiar looking, and most of the castle is off limits to Jonathan. And very shortly, Jonathan begins to fear for his life because he notices some rather peculiar behavior. As well, there is Dr. John Seward, who is the head attendant of the local insane asylum, particularly his one favorite inmate, Renfield. And who else do we have? And then we have Van Helsing from Amsterdam. Oh, and Mina Harker also has a friend, Lucy. Lucy is beautiful, and she has 3 men vying for her affection to marry her. Who does she have? There's John Seward, the doctor from the insane asylum. He wants to marry Lucy. There's an American, Quincy. Quincy wants to marry Lucy, but Lucy's decided on the richest one, Arthur something or other, and because he's a lord. What's interesting about Dracula, it is that the style it's written in, epistolary novel, being told through many lenses. So first of all, we have Jonathan's diary. He's keeping his diary while he's traveling from London to Transylvania. It starts off very nicely. He talks about going through Budapest. He talks about eating a chicken meal that's got a lot of paprika and very spicy and very salty. And that was wonderful for me because I thought, yes, I know exactly the chicken meal that he's talking about, cirque paprikash. So there was a lot of good stuff personally for me because I lived in that part of the world in Eastern Europe. Transylvania is a real place. It used to be in Hungary. Currently, today it is in Romania. Hungarians call it Erdély. And it's this strip of territory that used to belong to Hungary when Hungary was a big country, but after the dreaded Treaty of Trianon, it became a much smaller country. Okay, that has to get cut out. Jonathan's diary, Mina's diary, Dr. Seward's medical diaries, and the letters they are sending back and forth. So the story of Dracula is told in rather an interesting way. Like you might not have ever read a novel like this ever before because it's being told from these very interesting points of view. Especially in the beginning, we get quite a lot of Jonathan's diary, Mina's diary, Lucy's diary, Dr. Stewart's diary as he's meeting with his patients, and he's frustrated because Lucy is more in love with Arthur, the rich man. So the novel's being told from all of these perspectives, and particularly Jonathan's horrifying experiences in Castle Dracula. I'll tell you a little bit more. Dracula buys the real estate in London. He actually buys several houses, and I thought that was very interesting. I would really be interested in wondering about the actual locations of the land that he bought. Jonathan manages to escape from the castle, and what happens? Well, Dracula goes to England by boat. Jonathan makes his way back to London, even though he's really quite messed up by his experiences in Transylvania. Dr. Seward, basically what happens is when Dracula arrives in England, he starts preying upon Lucy, and Lucy's becoming pale, losing blood, she doesn't have any energy. Her teeth are getting longer for some strange reason. So they call Dr. Van Helsing from Amsterdam to come and help these people deal with the situation. Like, what is happening here? And Van Helsing, he knows. He says, this is the vampire. I know how to deal with him. I enjoyed Dracula quite a lot. This is the second time I've read it. However, this epistolary style was very, very good in the first half of the book, but then when all of the characters are gathered together in London, this epistolary style sort of falls apart because they meet and then they go home and they write their diaries. So Mina writes her diary, John writes his diary. It was better when they were all quite separate. Seward was in the lunatic asylum. Mina was taking care of Lucy. John was in Transylvania. Fragmented style worked extremely well. Now they're all together in the same space. It's a little bit tedious because quite a lot of like the middle of the book gets really bogged down with the fact that Mina is typing out all of the diaries of all of the characters. So Mina collects all the diaries, her husband's, the doctor's, Van Helsing, and she types them all out so we have an accurate report for posterity. So people will know this evil that we were fighting against, this blood-sucking vampire from Eastern Europe, and that we will have a record of it. So there is quite a lot of Mina typing out the diaries and everything. I didn't enjoy that because it was very slow. It just made the structure of the book a little bit unnecessary. Like it was quite good for the first half of the book, but for the second half of the book, it became like an unnecessary affectation. You can't just abandon the structure midway through, but it just didn't work as well for me in the second half of the book. Oh well. What else was interesting about this book? Well, we actually watched the film Dracula in class, the Bram Stoker one, the one that was really popular in the 1990s. And I watched that film in the 1990s. One of those early films where the marketing was just unbelievable, right? And do you remember that? They really marketed it as a love story. Dracula was a misunderstood monster, and he was in love with Mina. And that is not the way it is in the book by any means. Dracula is a monster. He is feeding on these women, not because he loves them, but because that keeps him alive. And there's one point in the book where he actually says to Jonathan Harker and Seward, he says to them, he says, I will take your women away from you, and I will make them my slaves, and they will do my bidding. That's not love or romance. He is telling them, I'm going to steal your women, and I will make them my servants. It's not about love. And the whole goddamn Francis Ford Coppola film, it was all this love. There's this crazy scene where Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder, they're sitting there and they're drinking absinthe. They have this crazy absinthe scene, which is just ludicrous stupid. Really, I think Francis Ford Coppola downward slope after Apocalypse Now. I really think so. Because watching this film, I'm happy to see Gary Oldman. I'm happy to see Anthony Hopkins. Hopkins did a good job, but it's a character that's a bit peculiar. And Richard E. Grant, God, I didn't realize it was him. Richard E. Grant plays this Dr. Seward, and Tom Waits is Renfield in the asylum. I wasn't terribly happy to watch the film. It confused me because the film is very much about this love between Mina and Dracula. Even at the very end of the film, Mina, played by Winona Ryder, they've been chasing this vampire all the way to Transylvania, all the way to his castle. They're about to cut off his head before he can get into the castle, before the sun sets. And suddenly everybody just kind of stops, and Mina takes Dracula, Gary Oldman, into his castle. And they have this big love scene where he tells her, okay, you do it. And she cuts his head off like it's this huge romantic thing that she's done, that now, because he's achieved pure love, she saved his soul. It's such a pile of shit compared to the book, which is drank the blood of Lucy until she died and then transformed into a vampire. And then, they killed her, put a stake through her heart, cut her head off, and filled her mouth full of garlic, as you should do. Take note. And then when Lucy was gone, he just started doing the same thing with Mina. It wasn't about love. It's about vampire survival, sucking the blood. Anyway, I'm going to be writing a big essay on Dracula about how Dracula is a symbol of reverse colonization. So all of those territories that England colonized, they come back, and now they are invading England. I think on rather a simple level, you could just say that it's about racism and bigotry, the way the British people can be quite snobbish and look down their noses and be quite condescending towards those Eastern European nations. It's true. There's that. There's this British fear of foreign invasion. I think that's a subject I can get some ideas out of, about how Dracula represents this Eastern European. He looks different. His mannerisms are different. He's not British. And he's going to come and he's going to steal their women. That's a great idea. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, Dracula, quite an excellent book. I do feel that the style and the structure, because of this diary, it's hard to maintain that when All four of the principal characters are in the same room talking to one another. And then the story is being told that now they go back to their diaries and they write out the information. Yeah, that got a little bit on my nerves, but it's still a great book. It ends. The big thing happens and it ends in like a half a page later. It's one of those books that ends right at the climax, which is kind of fun. Yeah, read Dracula. Dracula is a good book to read. It might take you a bit aback if you're not familiar with this style of writing, but it is very good. And you need to be careful too, because you have to look at what the different writers of the story are telling you at different times. I like the beginning, when Jonathan is stuck in Castle Dracula, discovering that he is absolutely trapped. And if he wants to escape from this place, he will have to risk his life to do so. That first bit of the book was my favorite part. All right, thank you very much for watching. This is Grant. Take care. Happy hunting. Like from the word epistle, meaning letter. Epistolary novel. God damn, can I say it once? I know how to deal with him. I will clean that fucker's clock. Come on, Grant, who's the goofy director? Batman Returns, The Barber with Johnny Depp, all those goddamn Johnny Depp films. Big Fish was a good film. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So